What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, then be sure to subscribe so you never miss a new video. And in today's video, I'm going to be continuing my Versus series that I started back in March. And with COVID and the gyms being shut down for 3 months, I decided to postpone it because I didn't have access to a gym. And I know that there was a lot of other people who didn't have access to the gym, meaning they wouldn't be able to perform these exercises, so the comparisons wouldn't have been as useful. So with that being said, I am resuming the series now. And I did cover episode 1 and episode 2. Episode 1 was the barbell bench press versus the dumbbell press. And episode 2 was the overhead press versus the seated dumbbell press. I highly encourage you guys to go check that out, and I did organize it on a playlist on my channel. The goal of my Versus series was to compare the most popular muscle building exercises by going over both the pros and the cons before giving a verdict to which one is ultimately better for you from a muscle building standpoint. And today is going to be episode 3, and we're going to be covering the T-bar rows versus the barbell rows and which one is ultimately going to get you a bigger back. So without further ado, let's dive right into the T-bar rows. Starting off with the first pro of the T-bar row, and that's going to be its increased loading potential when you are using the close grip handle. And this is mainly because the weight is directly in line with your body. The barbell is actually positioned behind you in the landmine attachment, versus with the bent over barbell row, you're actually having to pull from in front of your body. And I really do like this because you're not limited by your lower back and your leg strength, meaning you're actually going to be able to place more of the direct tension on your mid back and your lats. And I also do like the close grip handle for performing these because it does place your wrist and your hand into a more neutral grip position, which is a more comfortable range of motion for really allowing you to get those elbows close to your body and really engage those lats. Moving into the second pro, the T-bar row, and that's going to be less stress placed on your lower back. And like I highlighted with the first pro, since the barbell is actually anchored, this is going to be providing you with support, and the pulling movement is coming directly in line with your body versus in front of you. So there's going to be far less stabilization needed from both your core and your lower back. And if your lower back sometimes gets cranky like mine does, then this exercise is going to be the solution for really overloading your back while not having to worry so much about your lower back cramping up on you. I would definitely recommend using a weightlifting belt to help maintain that abdominal pressure, which can also help prevent lower back discomfort, but make sure you don't rely on the belt and really only use it for your heavy sets. And for the final pro, the T-bar row, it's going to be your ability to include drop sets. If you're anything like me, then most of my training is done alone and I don't normally train with a training partner. Therefore, adding intensity techniques into my workouts can be extremely hard. However, with the T-bar rows, it can be extremely easy to perform your reps, strip a couple plates off, and then continue without taking forever or really requiring a lot of effort like it would be if you were doing it with a barbell bent over row. So I think this is a perfect exercise from going for heavy sets and then dropping down to some lighter sets with ease, allowing you to really incorporate the intensity techniques needed to really build that thick and wide back. Now moving into the cons of the T-bar row, with the first one being that it actually requires a landmine attachment, which some gyms surprisingly don't have. And gym owners can get fussy if you try to anchor it within the corner of a wall because it could bang up the wall pretty bad. And another thing too, that if you use the close grip handle, it could potentially damage the barbell, which they don't like as well. So with that being said, if you do find yourself hopping around from gym to gym, make sure that you check that they have a T-bar row before you program it into your workouts. The second con of the T-bar rows are the shorter range of motion, and this is because you are limited by the weight hitting your chest. However, you can increase the range of motion by using 25-pound plates instead of 45s, which I would highly recommend, but it's nothing like the range of motion that you do get with the barbell row. With the barbell row, you do actually get a bigger, fuller stretch, and we do know how important stretch and being able to get that full range of motion is for muscle hypertrophy. So that would be the second con, is the shorter range of motion that you do get with the T-bar row. And now for the final con of the T-bar row, and that's going to be that there's less carryover strength to other exercises like your deadlifts and even pull-ups, because you do use less stabilization muscles, and the movement pattern is slightly different, making the bent over row more transferable for helping you improve your overall pulling strength. So if you are looking to improve on your strength on your pull-ups or even your raw strength in general on deadlifts, then you might want to stick to the barbell variation here. Alright, so now that we covered the T-bar rows, let's move into the pros of the barbell row, with the first one being the opposite of what I mentioned about carryover strength with the T-bar row, and that's the barbell row will actually have carryover strength to the deadlift because it mimics and incorporates similar muscles and stabilizers, with the only real difference being the amount of leg and core strength needed to actually maintain proper form when performing the exercise, making it a more effective exercise for actually hitting more muscle groups at once. The second pro of the barbell row is your ability to shift the focus from your lats to making it more of a bicep driven exercise simply by changing your grip from a pronated one to a supinated one. Not only does this recruit more biceps, but you will find that your elbows will naturally stay closer to your body, making the range of motion just feel smoother, and honestly I find that your lats fire a little bit easier as well. And now for the final pro, the barbell row that I really like the most, and that's the increased range of motion you can get. Unlike the TBar row, like I previously mentioned, you are limited with the range of motion by the weight actually hitting the floor and touching your chest. So you really only have that space in between, and I find that this can really make you not get the most optimal stretch on your lats. So because of this, I find the barbell row really allows for that nice deep stretch at the bottom, and I even like to exaggerate it sometimes to further stretch the lats, but you also get an amazing contraction at the top, and this is all going to play an important role for helping you increase overall muscle hypertrophy. Now moving into the cons of the barbell row, with the first one being that there are some loading limitations, and what I mean by this is your back could handle the weight, but you're actually going to be limited by your lower back, your core, and your legs. You might not have the strength to do so, or you might have a problem trying to keep them tight during the entire exercise, and this could actually force you to have to lower the weight. And this limitation is actually created from the bar being in front of your body, so you're rowing from in front of your body, versus with the T-bar row, you are rowing directly in line with your body. So because of this, I find that you can go heavier on the T-bar row, and you feel it a lot less in your hamstrings and your lower back. So if you definitely find that you're feeling it in your hamstrings and your lower back, definitely try the T-bar row, and I guarantee that you'll be able to go a little bit heavier, and it will feel a little bit more comfortable as well. The second con of the barbell row applies to pretty much most compound-based exercises, and that's going to be it's extremely form-driven, and unfortunately there are still way too many people that are going way too heavy with this exercise, and the form can be tough to learn, but it's extremely important to learn for beginners, and the worst mistake you can do is to keep adding weight without actually noticing that your form is being compromised. And what I mean by this is that you can see people actually swinging the weight and using type of body momentum, and I think that this is really not great in terms of actually getting your whole back engaged. It's going to require a little bit more leg drive, which isn't for the purpose of the exercise. So my advice is to make sure that your legs and your core are staying engaged and able to support the weight. You're not rounding at the back, and like I mentioned, the most important thing is to avoid using body momentum. So your chest should actually stay in one place, and you should really focus on driving those elbows back behind your body and contracting your back. So I think that because of that, the form can be definitely tough to use and can be extremely easy to want to keep adding weight. But like I mentioned, it's extremely important to make sure your form isn't breaking down. And now for the final con of the bent over barbell row, and this one is probably the top one on my list, and that's going to be it can stress your lower back. So if you are like me and you do have lower back issues, then it could cause it to get inflamed. Some days are good, some days are bad in terms of this exercise, but some things that I do to kind of reduce that lower back engagement that I do feel instead of actually feeling it in my lats and my upper back is that I wear a belt, because I find that it helps increase that interabdominal pressure. So definitely try that. But overall, I think that if you do find that you're experiencing some lower back pain from doing this exercise, then it might be in your best interest to actually go with the T-bar row. So that would be the major con, I think, to this exercise, is that it can kind of aggravate your lower back. Alright guys, now it's the time that everybody's been waiting for. Which one is ultimately better from a muscle building perspective? And honestly, I'm going to have to go with the T-bar rows. The reason being is because it does take a lot of stress off your lower back, and because of that I do have a better mind muscle connection with my lats and my mid back, so I'm also able to load it heavier, whereas the bent over barbell row, like I did mention, I do feel a little bit of inflammation and kind of fatigue in my lower back, and it does kind of limit the amount of weight that I'm able to actually lift. So with that being said, from a muscle building perspective, I think the T-bar row makes a lot more sense. You're able to kind of get in a great position to really target the back. You don't have all those other stabilization muscles like your core and your legs needed. So because of that, I'm going to have to give it to the T-bar row here. However, with that being said, that isn't to discredit the bent over barbell row. I do think it's a fantastic exercise, and I think that it's a very on an individual basis. So if you find that your lower back does kind of get fatigued before maybe your legs or your mid back or your lats, then maybe give the T-bar row a try and see whether or not that's a better exercise. So like I mentioned, it's very individual based, and for me, I'm going to have to give it, like I said, to the T-bar row. I think a great way to incorporate both of these, since they do train and mimic the same movement pattern with them being both rows and targeting the lats and the mid back, I think a great way is to periodize your training and focus on one at a time. So what I would do is I would do a 4 to 6 week block with the T-bar rows, progress in that, and then switch over to the bent over barbell rows. That will allow you for some great linear progression, and it will allow you to not make sure the exercises are getting stale. So that's what I would do. I would organize them in 2 blocks. But with that being said, if you don't find that the barbell rows kind of inflame your lower back, or you don't have any issues, then like I said, I do think it's a fantastic exercise and it will build you a big back. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel because I do have a lot of great exciting content planned in the works. I do plan on finishing off this versus series, and I have a lot more interesting exercise comparisons that I'm going to be giving you guys. Plus, like I said, I do have other content, anything from recipes to training videos to tips. So make sure you subscribe and also turn on the bell notifications. I want to make sure you guys get notified every time I drop a new video. So be sure to turn on the notifications and also drop the video a like. I do appreciate all the support and the feedback. It definitely goes a long way, and I'll catch everybody in the next one. All right, peace out.